When my father died, I thought the hardest part would be learning to live without him. I never imagined the true heartbreak would come from the man I'd vowed to spend my life with. My name is Nora Bennett. I'm 36 years old, and until recently I thought I had a pretty lucky life. I was married to Miles, charming, kind on the outside, and a guy who at first made me believe in forever. We met 8 years ago at a tech summit in Seattle. I was in event marketing and he was one of the keynote speakers, confident, charismatic, warm, or so I thought. I remember telling my dad about Miles the week after we met. He seems solid, Dad said over coffee at our favorite Portland diner. But Nora, watch out. Some people glow under spotlights and fade in the shadows. I laughed it off back then. My father, James Harper, had always been protective, especially since it was just us after Mom died when I was 20. He was my rock, my guide, and the genius behind Harper Innovations, the sustainable energy startup he built from nothing into a $35 million company. Miles and I got married 2 years after we met. It was a small wedding, just close friends and family, held in a Portland garden. My dad walked me down the aisle, his eyes wet with pride. Miles's mom, Marlene, sat up front, draped in a designer dress with a scowl she couldn't hide. From the start, she made it clear I wasn't her dream daughter-in-law. She's sweet. I overheard her murmur to Miles at our rehearsal dinner. But she's not executive material. Still, I tried. I sent her birthday cards, invited her to Sunday brunches, but Marlene never thawed. Miles just brushed off her digs like they were quirky little traits. Fast forward 6 years. My dad's health had been slipping slowly at first, but the cancer hit hard and fast. He passed away 4 months after the diagnosis, quietly in his sleep. I was wrecked. Not just because I'd lost my only parent, but because it happened so fast I couldn't brace myself. The funeral was simple, elegant, just how he'd have wanted it, held at a Portland chapel. Miles pitched in a little, but he seemed more distracted than mournful. Marlene rolled in late, hid behind dark sunglasses, and slipped out before the service ended. The day after the funeral, I got a call from my father's attorney. He wanted to meet about the estate. I didn't think much of it at the time. I knew Dad had done well with Harper Innovations, but I'd never pried into the details. I figured there'd be a few assets, maybe the house in Portland, some investments, enough to settle into a quiet life someday. Instead, I walked into his office and learned my father had left me everything. The company, the properties, the accounts. After taxes, fees, and debts, it was valued at just over $35 million. I sat there staring at the attorney, my hands shaking. Didn't feel real. That night, I sprawled the legal documents across our living room coffee table in our Portland condo. I didn't want to celebrate, I wanted to cry. This inheritance wasn't a jackpot. It was a weight, a reminder that Dad was gone. Miles came home from work, glanced at the papers and let out a low whistle. "So it's true," he said, plopping down beside me. "It's really all yours." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I didn't expect this much." He grinned, but something felt off. His eyes glinted in a way I couldn't place. His tone shifted. "Well, we should probably talk about what to do with it. I mean, obviously we'll invest. Maybe look at that cabin in Bend you liked. And of course, we'll figure out how much to give Mom." I blinked. "What?" Miles looked at me like I was missing something obvious. "My mom, Marlene. She's family. We give her half, right?" "Half?" I thought he was kidding. Then I saw his face, calm, dead serious. My chest tightened. "Miles," I said carefully, "this is an inheritance from my dad. Why would we give half to your mother?" He smiled, gentle but patronizing, like I was a kid who didn't get basic math. "Because she's family, Nora. She's been through a lot, sacrificed for me, raised me alone. It's only right." I laughed, not because it was funny but because it was absurd. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Miles and Marlene weren't family to my father. They were strangers circling a carcass, and I was just starting to see it. That was the first crack. His request hung in the air like a bad smell. I stared at him, heart pounding, wondering if I'd misheard. But his expression said it all. He meant every word. "Miles," I said, keeping my voice steady, "my dad left this to me. Not us, me. It's not a lottery win. It's his legacy, his life's work. Why on earth would we give half to your mother?" His face hardened and he leaned back with a scoff. "Nora, don't be selfish. You know she's family, my family." I blinked. "Exactly. Your family, not mine. She barely knew my dad. She ditched his funeral early. She hasn't even called to say she's sorry he's gone. Miles's voice sharpened. That's just how she is. She's not big on emotions, but she cares. You think you're the only one who lost someone? What about my loss? Watching my wife turn into a greedy jerk overnight. Greedy. That word hit me like a punch. My mouth opened then closed. I felt cold all of a sudden. My father had been buried for less than a week, and the man I'd married, the guy who'd once driven across town to bring me coffee during a deadline, who'd held my hand through late-night panic attacks, was now tossing around greedy like it was nothing. Something shifted in me. Or maybe something finally clicked into focus. I stood up. I need some air. As I walked out, I heard him mutter, "Unbelievable." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, his tone, his entitlement. It wasn't just about the money. It was how little he valued my father, how fast he assumed he deserved something he'd never lifted a finger to earn. My dad used to say, grief doesn't change people. It reveals them. God, he was right. The next morning, Miles acted like nothing happened. He brewed coffee, kissed my cheek, and rambled about the Portland rain. I didn't say a word. Later that day, my phone rang. Marlene. "Nora, sweetheart," she purred, her voice dripping with fake sugar. "Miles told me the wonderful news. I'm so proud of you. Your father was a brilliant man." I waited, already knowing where this was going. "I know this might be awkward," she continued. "But since you're coming into all that money, I thought we could sit down and talk numbers. I have some ideas, investments, real estate, maybe a little condo for myself. Something modest, tasteful." I gripped the phone tighter, fighting the urge to scream. "You want to talk numbers, Marlene? I lost my father less than a week ago." She clicked her tongue. "Yes, and he'd want you to take care of family. That's what good daughters and good wives do." Something snapped. "Marlene, with all due respect, you're not my family. You're not entitled to a cent of this money. And the fact that you're even asking now says everything about you." Silence. Then her voice turned ice cold. "You always thought you were too good for us. Well, let's see how long you last on your own, sweetheart." She hung up. I stared at my phone, hands trembling. By dinner, Miles had heard about it. He didn't even try to hide his anger. "You had no right to talk to my mother like that," he snapped. "She had no right to ask for money," I shot back. His voice rose. "She's my only family, and I won't let you treat her like trash just because you got a windfall." I looked him straight in the eye. "This isn't a windfall, Miles. It's a grave. My father died, and instead of grieving with me, you and your mother are acting like it's a payout." He didn't answer. His silence screamed louder than any fight. Over the next few days, it got worse. Marlene started showing up at our condo unannounced. Once with a stack of real estate listings she thought we should buy, another time with a designer friend to plan upgrades. Miles didn't stop her. He egged her on. "She's just excited," he'd say. "Don't be so dramatic." Dramatic. I was watching my marriage crumble in slow motion, and he called me dramatic. I started locking the office where I kept the legal papers. I changed my passwords, moved some of the funds into a separate account, and met with the attorney again, privately this time. "I'm not sure yet," I told him, "but I need to know my options." He nodded. "You're not the first to walk in here after an inheritance, but most don't come with security cameras." I blinked. "Cameras?" He leaned forward. "Install them now. Especially if you're living with someone who thinks they deserve half of everything." The idea made my skin crawl, but I did it. 2 days later, I caught Marlene snooping through my desk drawers on the footage. She wasn't looking for a pin. She was after the inheritance papers. That was the moment I stopped grieving and started planning. Marlene didn't even flinch when I caught her red-handed. "Oh, Nora," she said, breezy as if she'd just been browsing for a snack. "I was looking for a notepad. Miles said you keep extras in here." Her hand lingered near the locked drawer, the one with the inheritance documents. I stood in the doorway, forcing my breath to stay even. My heart wasn't racing from fear anymore. It was fury. "Next time you need something," I said, voice tight, "ask." She flashed a smug, thin-lipped smile. "Of course, dear." As soon as she left, I locked the drawer again and checked the camera footage. Clear as day, her rifling through folders, opening envelopes, scanning labels. She wasn't curious, she was hunting. That night I confronted Miles. Your mother was in my office today, trying to get at the inheritance paperwork. He didn't even look up from his phone. She was curious. It's a lot of money, Nora. People get curious. She had no right, I said, sharper than I meant to. He sighed, rubbing his temples like I was the exhausting one. You're being paranoid. It's not like she took anything. She doesn't need to take it, I snapped. She's trying to guilt us into handing it over. Miles stood up, towering over me. She's not guilting anyone. She's trying to help. And frankly, you should be grateful someone's thinking straight about this money. You're acting like a hoarder. I froze. A hoarder. Miles took a step back, maybe realizing he'd crossed a line. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly. I just meant you're keeping it all to yourself. That's not what families do. Something inside me turned to steel. This isn't about family, I said. It's about greed and control. Ever since my dad died, you've stopped seeing me as your wife and started seeing me as a bank account. He scoffed and stormed out. I didn't follow. I couldn't. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart hammering, and cried, not for Dad this time but for me. Because I knew then my marriage was over. I just hadn't made it official. Over the next week I started preparing quietly. I met with a financial advisor to secure the funds. I hired a second lawyer, one who specialized in asset protection and high net worth divorces. I began moving money into my personal account, every transfer legal and documented. But I didn't stop there. On the attorney's advice, I upgraded the security system, cameras at every entrance, and hired a private investigator to dig into Marlene's financial past. What he found wasn't shocking. Credit card debt, a string of failed side hustles, and a recent pitch for a boutique yoga studio with no funding. No wonder she was clawing at my inheritance. Meanwhile, Miles's behavior swung like a pendulum. He'd go cold and distant, then flip to sudden affection. One night he brought home flowers, tulips my favorite. Another night he cooked dinner, a rare move. I've been thinking, he said as we sat at the table, maybe we got off on the wrong foot with all this. It's been rough, losing your dad, dealing with the inheritance, planning our future. I watched him, fork hovering over my plate. He hadn't cooked in over a year. I didn't touch the wine he poured. So what are you saying? I asked, cautious. He smiled too smooth. Let's start fresh. Forget the money talk. How about a trip? Just you and me somewhere nice. I stared at him, seeing it for what it was. This wasn't an olive branch, it was a play. He thought if he could soften me up, I'd let my guard down, and he'd worm his way back into control. But it was too late. I think I'll pass on the trip, I said, forcing a polite smile. Too much going on at work. He didn't argue, but the flicker in his eyes said he wasn't done trying. The next morning I noticed my laptop had moved. Just an inch, but enough. The lid was cracked open, I always shut it. I checked the login history. 2 failed password attempts overnight, and the camera light had blinked on at 2 a.m. Miles denied it, of course. Must be a glitch, he shrugged. I didn't respond. I changed my passwords again and took my lawyer's next tip. Gather evidence. Every scrap of it. So I did. Every conversation, every sideways glance, every guilt trip about the inheritance. I recorded it. Audio clips of Miles calling me selfish, screenshots of Marlene's texts about family investments, the video of her digging through my desk. I built a case because when I walked away it wouldn't just be with my dignity, it'd be with proof. If Miles thought he could play me, he was about to learn who he'd married. 3 days after he tried to crack my laptop, Miles dropped the act entirely. No more flowers, no fake apologies. He just hovered, watching, waiting like he knew something was slipping away and couldn't stop it. Marlene, though, went full throttle. One morning I walked into the kitchen to find her sitting at the table, barefoot, robe half open, sipping my coffee like she owned the place. She'd let herself in with the spare key Miles swore he'd given to the building manager. Nora, she smiled, all syrup and venom. We need to talk. I stared at her. You need to leave. Now. She didn't move. I just want to make sure you're not doing anything rash. You're under stress. I'd hate for you to mess up financially just because you're grieving. I laughed, bitter and loud. You mean mess up by not handing millions to a woman who hasn't held a job in years and calls me selfish behind my back? Marlene's eyes narrowed. Careful, Nora. It's not smart to make enemies in your own home. I leaned in, voice low and steady. This isn't your home, and neither is the money. Get out before I call the police. She stood, glaring, and left without another word. After the door slammed, I locked it, took a deep breath, and called my lawyer. It's time, I said. I want to move forward. We started drafting the divorce papers. My lawyer had urged me to be strategic, quiet, clean. I'd already shifted half the inheritance into a trust, untouchable in a divorce, thanks to Dad's foresight in how he'd set it up. The other half was still in my personal account, technically joint unless I acted fast. That night I told Miles I wanted to meet at a cafe the next morning, neutral ground, public, safe. He looked wary but agreed. I got there early, took a corner table with a clear view of the door. The divorce papers were in my bag, along with a flash drive packed with evidence, recordings, screenshots, the video of Marlene in my office. Miles walked in 5 minutes late, forcing a smile. Hey Elle, he said, too casual. What's this about? I didn't waste time. I slid the envelope across the table. What's this? He asked. Divorce papers, I said. His face twitched. He didn't touch it. Is this a joke? No, I said. This is me saying I'm done. He laughed, cold, hollow. You're serious? Over money? No, I said. Over disrespect. Over betrayal. Over you treating my father's death like your personal lottery. His smile vanished. I supported you, Nora, for years. I was there when your mom died. I stood by you. And now that you're rich, you're just tossing me out. No, I said. You tossed yourself out the moment you decided your mother deserved more than your wife. He slammed his hand on the table, heads turned. You think you're so smart. You think you can walk away with everything? We're married, I get half in the divorce. That's the law. I smiled, calm and sharp. Actually, no. The inheritance is separate property. My lawyer checked. Dad left it to me, you've got no claim. Not a cent. He went pale. You're bluffing. I set the flash drive on the table. Every word, every lie, every move you made to manipulate me. It's all here. If you push me, the judge sees it all. He stared at it like it was a bomb. I'm offering you a fair settlement, I said. Take what we built together, nothing more. Or fight me in court and walk away with less. Miles leaned back, eyes empty. You really think you'll win? I already have. He didn't say another word. He grabbed the envelope and left. That night I changed the locks again. I sent Marlene a cease and desist letter through my attorney, and blocked them both from every contact point. There was no turning back. But for the first time in weeks I really slept because the line was drawn. Next came the reckoning. The morning after I handed Miles the divorce papers, the silence in my Portland condo was deafening and glorious. No more of his heavy footsteps pacing the hall. No more Marlene's cloying perfume wafting through the air. No more forced smiles, just quiet. I stood in the kitchen, cradling a hot mug of coffee, watching sunlight spill through the windows. For the first time since Dad's funeral, I didn't feel like I was just hanging on. I felt like I could breathe again. But peace didn't last long. 3 days later, Miles fought back. My lawyer called me. Miles has filed a response to the divorce petition. He's demanding spousal support. I nearly dropped my phone. What? According to his claim, she said, you accumulated wealth during the marriage, and he supported your emotional well-being, entitling him to compensation for his contributions. My blood boiled. Supported my emotional well-being? The same guy who'd pressured me to fork over half my inheritance to his mother? The same guy who'd barely glanced my way while I sobbed through Dad's last days? It was laughable, pathetic even, but I didn't panic. I'd prepared for this. We hit back hard. Every piece of evidence I'd gathered went into our response. The late-night laptop password attempts, Marlene's uninvited visits caught on camera, recordings of Miles dismissing my grief, and that damning footage of her rifling through my office. My lawyer submitted it all. Then the harassment started. Blocked calls, random emails from burner accounts, texts from numbers I didn't know, but I knew who was behind it. One voicemail hissed through my phone. Nora, you're ruining everything. This isn't how family works. Call me back. Another message, short and sharp. You'll regret this. I didn't. I went to work, met friends for drinks, started therapy. I walked my dog along the Willamette River, hit the gym, sat in cafes with a novel. Small things that felt like reclaiming my life. Word trickled back through mutual friends. Miles had moved in with Marlene, who just defaulted on another credit card. They were scheming with some sketchy financial advisor about flipping houses. No money down, of course. Miles had quit his job a week after Dad died, banking on my inheritance to float him. Now he had nothing, no income, no car. I'd had the Tesla he drove repossessed. It was still in Harper Innovations' name. No ground to stand on. Their little house of cards was collapsing. Then came the knockout punch. My lawyer called again. The judge reviewed the evidence. Miles's spousal support claim? Denied completely. Not only does he get 0 from your inheritance, but the court flagged his actions as manipulative, borderline predatory. If he keeps pushing, we've got grounds for a restraining order. I smiled. Let's keep that card in reserve. I didn't need it. Miles cracked. One night he called from a new number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Nora, he said, voice shaky, please just listen. I stayed silent. I messed up. I see it now. Mom got in my head, I got greedy. But I miss you. I miss us. I waited for the catch. You can't do this to me, he said, his tone rising. I gave you years, and now you're leaving me with nothing. There it was. He didn't love me. He loved what I could have given him. Status, security, a free ride. When he saw I wouldn't bend, he unraveled. You gave me nothing, I said, calm as stone. And I owe you even less. I hung up and blocked him. 2 weeks later, the divorce was final, clean, efficient. My legal team had locked down everything. My assets, my shares in Harper Innovations, the downtown Portland loft I'd inherited from Dad. Miles walked away with a few grand in savings and whatever pride he hadn't already burned through. Marlene tried suing me for emotional distress. The judge tossed it out in a heartbeat. With the dust settled, I did something for Dad. I donated a chunk of the inheritance to a renewable energy research fund in his name. James Harper's legacy powering the future, just like he'd always dreamed. It wasn't about revenge. It was about letting go. And now I was free. 7 months since the divorce was signed. 7 months since I left that courthouse with a decree in hand and a quiet smile that said, I'm done giving my peace to people who don't deserve it. The condo was still mine, but it felt haunted. Echoes of Miles's slamming doors, Marlene's sharp voice, the life I'd thought I'd live. So I sold it. Not out of spite, not even necessity, just release. Dad's old loft downtown, the one he'd left me years ago but I'd never claimed, was waiting. I renovated it. Warm wood floors, big windows, soft furniture. It wasn't just a home. It was mine. The first night there, I lit a candle and sat by the window, alone but safe. I thought of Dad, how proud he'd be. Not of the money or the fight, but of me standing up. He'd always said, Nora, power isn't loud. It's in quietly refusing to be used. He was right. For a while, I braced for a twist, Miles with another scheme, Marlene with a cheap lawyer's letter. But nothing came. Just silence. I heard later that Miles had filed for bankruptcy. Marlene was holed up in a rented basement in Beaverton. Social media gone dark. Their entitlement empire had imploded. Me? I was rebuilding, not from zero but from truth. I went back to work with fresh eyes. Poured part of the inheritance into a scholarship for first-gen tech students at Portland State. Honoring Dad's belief in lifting others up. I started mentoring women in startups. Too many had faced what I had. Manipulation masked as love, support that came with strings. They didn't need rescuing. They needed to know they could choose themselves. Revenge didn't taste sweet. What did was waking up without a knot in my chest, checking my phone without dread, sitting in silence and feeling calm instead of coiled. What tasted sweet was looking in the mirror and seeing me again. Not Miles's version, not Marlene's punching bag, but the me Dad raised, the me I'd almost lost. One afternoon, while unpacking boxes in the loft, I found an old letter tucked inside one of Dad's books, a worn copy of The Alchemist he'd loved. It was in his handwriting, dated 3 years before he died. Nora, it started. If you're reading this, I'm not around anymore. And I want you to remember something. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them. It just turns up the volume on what's already there. Don't let anyone guilt you into giving away what they think they deserve. Share when it's love. Guard it when it's greed. And if someone ever forces you to pick between peace and pleasing them, choose peace. Every time. I sat on the floor with that letter, tears streaming down my face. Not from pain but from relief. Even gone, Dad had handed me exactly what I needed. A map, a nudge to trust myself. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't wrong, and choosing me wasn't selfish. It was survival. I kept the letter on my nightstand, a quiet anchor. Now, when people ask about the divorce, I don't dive into the money or the manipulation or even the betrayal. I tell them this. I learned that love without respect is just ownership, and family without boundaries is chaos. I didn't just survive my marriage, I outgrew it. The sweetest revenge wasn't watching Miles and Marlene crash. It was healing without needing them to witness it. It's been 7 months since I claimed this new life, and I'm still here. Still standing, still smiling, still soft but no longer silent. The loft's mine now, filled with light and traces of me. A shelf of books I actually read. A playlist humming through the speakers. A dog bed for Riley. My rescue mutt who's better company than Miles ever was. I sold the condo because I didn't need its ghosts, but I kept Harper Innovations running, stronger than ever. I hired a new COO to handle the day-to-day, freeing me to focus on the scholarship program and mentoring. It's not about the money, it's about what Dad built, what he believed in. For a while, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Some last-ditch stunt from Miles, a spiteful note from Marlene. But the silence held. Mutual friends stopped mentioning them. Their names faded from my orbit. I heard Miles's bankruptcy went through. That Marlene's yoga studio dream fizzled before it started. They're out there somewhere licking their wounds, but they don't matter anymore. They're just static in the rear view. I've rebuilt from the ground up. Not from scratch but from what's real. Work steady, but it's not my whole life now. I hike in Forest Park on weekends, sip coffee at Stumptown with a sketch pad, volunteer at a community garden Dad would have loved. I've mentored a dozen women so far, sharp, driven ones who faced their own Milas and Marlenis. I don't preach. I just listen, then remind them they're not stuck. They've got choices. That's enough. The funny thing is, I thought winning would feel loud, some big cinematic payback. It didn't. What felt good was the quiet. Waking up without that gnawing dread. Scrolling my phone without bracing for a fight. Sitting alone and feeling whole instead of hollow. What felt good was catching my reflection in the loft's big windows and recognizing myself. Not the Nora Miles tried to shape, not the Nora Marlene sneered at, but the Nora Dad raised. The one I'd almost let slip away. I don't hate them. Hate's too heavy and I'm done carrying their weight. Miles wanted a trophy. Marlene wanted a payout. They didn't get either, and that's their story now, not mine. Mine's simpler. I lost a father, a marriage, a version of myself I'd clung to. And in the losing I found something better me. Not perfect, not loud, but steady. Whole. Free. So here I am in a life I chose, not one I settled for. The city hums outside my window, Portland's rainy streets, the distant buzz of traffic, the promise of a new day. I light a candle some nights, think of Dad and smile. He'd say I did good, not because I fought, but because I walked away when it mattered. And he'd be right. I'm not just surviving anymore. I'm living.